Hi, good afternoon.
I'm glad that was, it looks like we were successful.
We were successful. We, for a brief moment, were not able to show our cameras, but we got it all figured out just in the nick of time.
That is why we get on calls a little bit early and make sure everything runs smoothly. All right. Well, I will get it all set up. If you'd still like, I can start sharing the agenda and have that put up on the screen while we wait for people to join us here.
That would be great. Thanks, Charlie.
All right.
Hi, Robin.
Hi, Kristen. Hi, Charlie.
Hi, Robin. Good
Hi,
afternoon, Mark.
Oh. Hi, everyone. We're waiting on a good number of folks, so can you give it a couple more minutes before we get going?
Hey, Kristen, if you could make me a co-host, I believe there are a few attendees who I need to promote to panelists, and I'll do so as soon as you allow me.
Great. I will do that right now. Thank you, Charlie.
No problem.
think it is just allowing me to make you host. So I'm just gonna give you the full host privilege.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, NJ. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so it is 4:01. Charlie, good to see you. I haven't checked the roster. Do you confirm that everyone is in attendance except for Commissioner Alvarez and Commissioner Britton?
I am doing my last one more count of the list.
Thank you.
Bear with me 1 second as I run through that list.
I appreciate your help with that. Thanks again.
NJ, this is Supervisor Provenza. I just wanted to let you know I can only stay until 5, but
Okay.
that my Deputy Supervisor Sheila Allen is here, and she will be here for the entire meeting.
Thank you, Supervisor Provenza. Really good to see you.
Thank you.
And hi, Sheila.
Hello, NJ.
NJ, I'm going through the list. And I believe there are 2 commissioners I'm not seeing as present, and that is Commissioner Bennett and Commissioner Britton.
Okay, thank you. And again, I don't see everyone on screen. Can you tell me if Supervisor Saylor is with us?
I'm not seeing him being present yet at this time either.
Okay, I'll check again. So given that everyone who was expected to be present is here, I am calling this meeting to order. So again, warm greetings, happy Monday to all my fellow commissioners, to Supervisor Provenza, to the staff, and to members of the public. So as you know, this meeting is happening remotely due to the circumstances we're dealing with, and in accordance to Government Code Section 9.4. I won't read it because I'm sorry, I don't have the agenda in front of me. Members of the public are invited to make public comments after agenda items. You'll have about 3 minutes for that. And at the end of the agenda, you'll see the guidelines when it comes to that. So if we're ready to get started, I will start with the roll call, and then we'll move on to agenda item number 1. Is that good, Kristen?
That's great. Thanks.
Okay, so let's do the roll call. Commissioner Reed,
Here.
Commissioner Dattel,
Here.
thank you. Commissioner Ullman,
Here.
Vice Chair Kim,
Here.
Commissioner Serena, Commissioner Serena, are you here? Can you hear us? Oh,
Yeah, I was having issues with my audio. Apologies.
thank you, Adelita. Good to hear your voice. Commissioner White,
Here.
so Commissioner Austin,
Present.
thank you. Commissioner Alvarez is going to be late and will be with us at 5 p.m.
Oh, actually, I'm here. My meeting was
Oh.
canceled.
Okay, really good to see you.
Here.
So Commissioner Alvarez is here, and Commissioner Bennett.
I do not see you among the attendees.
Okay, so I will mark Commissioner Bennett absent for now, and Commissioner Britton is absent. Commissioner Morgan,
Here.
good to see you. Commissioner Dulcich,
I do not see
Okay.
him among the attendees as well.
thank you. And I already graded Supervisor Provenza. Do you see Supervisor Seller or still not yet? Okay, so I'm guessing Supervisor Seller has not joined us yet.
Sorry, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. And I'm also greeting Deputy Sheila Allen. So let's move on to agenda item number 1, and I'll let the staff take it from there. And I do have something to, a motion to make on that first agenda item. Kristen, would you let me know when it's a good time to make the motion, please?
Now's a great time. Thank you.
Okay, so as a result of the declared emergency, the legislative body finds that by majority vote, that meeting in person. Yes, is someone interrupting me? Okay, so again, I'm starting again. I motion that as a result of the declared emergency, the legislative body finds by majority vote that meeting in person will represent imminent risk to the health or safety of attendees. So the reason for this motion is because some commissioners inquired about whether or not we'll be meeting in person in the near future. So I motion that is commissioned by vote, basically vote that we continue to meet remotely. May I put this to a vote right now?
Second.
Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Awesome, second. Andrew and I are tag teaming.
Okay, good, thank you. So let's, Kristen, I don't remember if this is, I'm supposed to ask for public comment because we're about to vote on it, and I think the public might be invited to weigh in before we do so.
I do not believe there's public comment on this particular item, but Taro can correct me if I'm wrong. Taro's shaking his head no, so I think we can go to a vote.
Okay, thanks for confirming. I cannot see Taro right now. So let's put it to a vote. Commissioner Reid.
Aye.
Commissioner Dattel.
Aye.
Commissioner Ullman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kim.
Aye.
Commissioner Serena.
Aye.
Commissioner White.
Aye.
Commissioner Austin.
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Aye.
Okay, so Commissioner Bennett, are you here? I guess not. Commissioner Britton is absent, and I vote aye as well. This motion passes unanimously. And Kristen, I'll let you continue on with agenda item number 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait, I'm sorry, is there something, if this meeting is authorized to continue remotely?
Yes, the motion passed and the meeting is authorized to continue remotely.
Excellent.
Is there anything you need to add, or am I moving on to agenda item number 2?
We can move on to agenda item number 2.
Okay, so thank you, commissioners. We're moving quickly as of now. Commissioner Kim volunteered to read the land acknowledgement for us. This is attachment A.
Yes, thank you. We should take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered. For thousands of years, this land has been the home of Patwin people. Today, there are 3 federally recognized Patwin tribes: Kachil Dehi Band of Wintoon Indians of the Calusa Indian Community, Quetzal Dehi Band of Wintoon Indians, and Yocha Dehi Wintoon Nation. The Patwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. It has been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations. We are honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands.
Thank you, Commissioner Kim. So let's move on to agenda item number 3, approval of the agenda. So I do have a question for our fellow commissioners. So one of our experts from Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District has to leave, I believe, at 5 p.m. So I'm asking for your approval for a small modification in the agenda just regarding the order of items. So regarding item number 7, which is approve remaining early action project descriptions, We are requesting, the staff and I, that the discussion of the Yolo agricultural equipment retrofit program take place before the remaining 2 early action project description. So I will basically, I think what I'm asking is if there is any opposition for that agenda item to be placed ahead of the last 2. Does anyone oppose? Okay. I do not hear a yes. So I am assuming that that modification is accepted, and we are going to do a roll call of the a vote regarding the approval of the agenda. I'm checking if the attendees. I don't see public comments on the approval of the agenda, so let's vote on it. So I motion
that we approve the agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Bernadette seconds.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Austin. So let's place it to a vote. Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Dattel,
Aye.
Commissioner Ullman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kim,
Aye.
Commissioner Serena,
Aye.
Commissioner White,
Aye.
Commissioner Austin,
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Bennett, are you here? That's a no. Commissioner Britton is absent. This motion, and I vote aye. This motion passes unanimously. The agenda has been approved. Okay, so agenda item number 4, members of the public, you're invited to share thoughts and comments on topics that are not on the agenda. Do we have any comments from the public? Please raise your hand if you would like to share something that won't be discussed today otherwise.
Not seeing any of the attendees with hands raised, although there is one call-in number who I've allowed to talk just because I don't believe they have the hand raise function there.
Okay. So I confirm that I do not see any request for public comment as well. So let's look at agenda item number 5, approval of March 28, 2022 Commission meeting minutes. This is attachment B. So asking commissioners, do you have any observations? Are you ready to make a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting together?
I move approval of minutes.
Of March 28th. Do we have a
Correct.
second? Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Commissioner Reid. Do we
Bernadette will second as well.
Okay. Commissioner Austin voting second. You're tandem tonight. Let's put it to, let's see, sorry. Just quickly checking. Any members of the public want to comment? I'm asking in doubt. I do not see any. Yes, no hands raised. Let's place that motion to a vote. Commissioner Reid,
Aye.
Commissioner Dattel,
Abstain.
Commissioner Ullman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kim,
Aye.
Commissioner Serena,
Aye.
Commissioner White,
Aye.
Commissioner Austin,
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez,
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett, are you here? I guess no. Commissioner Britton is absent. I vote aye. There is one abstention. This motion passes. So the minutes for March 28th have been approved. Okay, so now it's agenda item 6, staff announcement. So I am letting the staff lead us into this section. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So I'm going to run through a couple of announcements that are outlined in the agenda. So first, starting with a request to share grant funding opportunities as we move into our grant strategy for our early action projects, just putting out a request to send along any grant applications that you see that might fit the description of the various projects that we're putting forward. We know that you are all on a number of listservs, and so want to collect what great information you're already seeing. So just a quick request there. The second item is exploring additional communication pathways. NJ had raised a number of really excellent points about how we might be able to improve communication as a commission, and I just wanted to provide a quick overview of some things that we're thinking about, following up on NJ's comments. So first of all, just as acknowledgement that we have to update the website. There are changes that are going to be made over the coming weeks and months. And so there are definitely opportunities there to make adjustments and to improve the ways we're communicating out. One of the things that we're looking into is creating some sort of additional listserv that we might be able to integrate into the website to allow the public to provide links to events, resources that might be of interest to the commission and to folks who follow the commission and our work. And so we're exploring how we might be able to integrate that and improve ongoing communication out about the commission and our work. Another item is trying to develop a social media presence for the commission as another outreach channel, particularly as we move into some of the steps for our CAP, thinking about creating another tool for getting the word out about what we're doing is something that I think could be of great use. And so we're having conversations internally at the county about how we might be able to set that up and what the process will look like for managing a social media page moving forward. And then I believe those were all the points on communication. Thanks, NJ. And so of course, any other thoughts about that, we will continue to talk and make updates, but and provide updates as we hear more from the county and what we might be able to do with our website. The third item under staff announcement is communication protocol to consultants. And so now just a request, and I think we are moving in this direction, but just wanted to make a note that as moving forward, if you are having questions, comments, thoughts about the work that the consultants have been doing, to route those questions through staff. I think we've been moving from consultants being an extension of staff to trying, now that I'm on board full time, trying to move some of those communications in-house. So just a request that questions and things like that be directed through county staff to myself, Taro, Charlie, etc. And then item D under staff announcement, change to minute structure. This is just a quick FYI you likely saw looking through the minutes. It's a small change, but just wanted to note that we are trying to cut back on the length of meeting minutes. I think for clarity purposes and to try to make it a little easier to digest and to track the flow of conversation. And so don't want folks to think that we're not capturing your thoughts. We want to make sure the recordings are going to be available, and Charlie is working on getting YouTube links for our recordings so that they can be posted directly on the website so you don't have to log in through Zoom. So the long version of the commission is always available through YouTube, but we're going to be trying to shorten the meeting notes a little bit just so that they're easier to go through moving forward. And then item E, potential changes to the Brown Act and post-pandemic teleconferencing. I'm actually going to pass it over to Taro on that because he's had a number of conversations relevant to that I would like him to share.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you, commissioners. I will keep my comments fairly brief. I'm harboring a cold right now, so I also apologize if I stop midway. So I wanted to let the commission know the memo is in your packet. I wanted to let you know that we're working with our county counsel's office to understand and see what the future of these online meetings might be. There are some challenges to that with the Brown Act as it is currently written. I understand there is legislation being considered that would allow for hybrid meetings in a way that is not so challenging, I would say, for those members of the commission that would like to participate remotely, and certainly for the members of the public. A lot of it, again, is somewhat fluid right now, but if you do read the memo by the county council, you may have some questions about that, and we're happy to address those. So far as the governor's order is in place, we still have the ability, like today, to meet as we continue by making that finding that it's in the best interest of safety to continue to meet online. But things might change in the coming months. So I just wanted to put that on the commission's radar. And again, if you go through the memo, you have some questions, let me know or Kristen know, and we will do our best to answer them. Thank you.
And then the final item under staff announcements is an update on the ad hoc working group, and I will pass it off to Michael to give that update.
Thank you, Kristen. We had 2 very successful meetings of the ad hoc working group, and we decided and put forward to the working group the request for 1 additional discussion. We were able to go through the draft scope of work outline in the last ad hoc working group, which was really exciting to be able to talk with the team about that. We've come back with some pretty significant edits to the document as a result of our discussion at the working group. And really looking forward to our next working group meeting, where we'll be diving into more detailed scope of work that will then bring forward to the full commission in draft form. And then we'll have another commission meeting following that for the final recommendation to the staff in the county. So that's a very brief summary of the working group. Kristen, I didn't know if you have anything else to add on that. But again, very excited about the progress on the scope of work, and thanks so much for the working group members and spending the time with us to really work through it and build out the details.
Thanks, Michael. No other updates from me there.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Kristen, and thank you, Taro. Commissioners, you have any clarifications that you need? Is there any clarification you need regarding what you just heard, all the staff announcements and report? Okay, I do not see any reactions. Very briefly, and again, trying to keep this short because some people have to leave at 5. Do we have any questions from reactions from members of the public? Any public comment? I see Juliette Beck would like the floor. Charlie? Thank you. So Juliette, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name just one more time. Very quick background, so members of the public or people listening just have some quick information, and we're listening. Thank you again.
Thank you. Yes, I will be brief. My name is Juliette Beck. I'm a climate justice advocate here in Yolo County in Davis. And my question was based on Michael McCormick's update to regarding the scope of work for the CAP. And I'm wondering if the scope is being drawn up with the idea of just hiring 1 consultant, or will there be a separate equity-based consultant involved? And are you dividing up the work with the scope of work within the CAP process to have different types of consultants? Because I think we saw with the Oakland, which I consider to kind of be the gold standard when it comes to climate action plans. City of Oakland had a separate equity consultant that really provided a lot of different kinds of insights. It had almost a parallel process to what the city was overseeing and doing with their consultants around greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm just wondering how that's been considered, and if I don't know if this question is applicable at this point, but I'm very curious about that process. Thank you.
Juliette, thank you very much for your question. Just again, as a reminder in general, so we're taking comments and feedback, of course, for the public. usually the procedure is to make note. Commissioners and staff don't necessarily answer a question on the spot, but do know that you'll get an answer at some point. I just wanted to clarify that again for everyone. Also, kind of reminder, you all know that, but I'm just saying it just in case. No one has done it, but of course, we're not using chat. That will be in violation, I believe, of the Brown Act. But if you do have a technical problem and your audio is not working, then please do leave a note in the chat. Juliette Beck, thank you again very much for your comment. Okay, so Petrea, it's really good to have you with us. I believe that agenda item number 7, that you are leading us into it. I was wondering if you would like to start with attachment K. I don't know how you want to proceed.
I'm actually going to let Kristen introduce the item, and then I will follow up after her comments.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And thanks, Sanjay. Looking at our staff report for this item attachment D. So for this item, there are 2 main actions. One, the first is to receive and file the 4 early action project descriptions that have been updated from the last meeting. Just a note, we will discuss the different updates or the descriptions, but these are based on the updates that have made. At this time, we're just receiving and filing them. We're not having additional discussion about these 4 project descriptions. So just want to make that comment quickly. And then the second action here is to approve the remaining 3 early action project descriptions. And so this is where we will have an adjustment. We will move the Yolo agricultural equipment retrofit program discussion first. We will then talk through the feasibility study to remove fossil fuels from Yolo County operations, and then we will wrap up with the zero emission vehicle master plan. And so with that overview, I will pass it over to Petrea, who will walk us through all of these items.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, it's a pleasure to be here again tonight. I wanted to just add to Kristen's initial comments. I'll start off with an overview of the next steps of the process. It's in your long range planning calendar as well, but just wanted to fit it into the bigger picture. So first of all, as you know, this is the last, today we'll be considering the last of the early action project descriptions. And then we will be taking all of the project descriptions, including the prioritization of those project descriptions and the information about how you chose those 7 out of all of the different proposals that were presented to the commission to the Board of Supervisors at their May meeting. So that will end a significant component of your work over the last few months and start a new part of this process, which is identifying grants that match up to those early actions so that we can secure funding as fast as possible to implement them. So that grant strategy will come back to you at the June meeting after that we've heard and incorporated any feedback for the Board of Supervisors on the early actions. And then that grant strategy will go to the Board of Supervisors in July. So that's the big picture of how this meeting and these items before you fit into the process. So with that, I'm just going to briefly go through the changes to the 4 project descriptions that you heard of, that you reviewed and recommended to the Board of Supervisors at your last meeting. So as you may recall, one of the items that you approved was the carbon farming partnership. And in addition to recommending approval to the board, you added language stating that they'll develop a process to measure carbon sequestration. Staff did end up adding that language to every single one of the project descriptions, feeling that was an important component and really appreciated that feedback from the commission. So if you see it in the others as well, it's because we wanted to be consistent across those 4 project descriptions. Also, as a result of the commission discussion, we added language regarding the carbon uptake benefits of carbon farming and information on financial incentives. So I just wanted to again reiterate how much we appreciate all of the good discussion that you're having, and that even if something is not included in a motion, if staff feels like it's an important update to the project description, they are evaluating those opportunities and incorporating that information as needed. The second is the electrification retrofit rebate outreach program. So this one, we had a number of changes, and I'm not going to go through all of them because they're listed in the staff report, but all of those changes were made. And again, we did add that language about measuring greenhouse gas emission reductions as well. Third, we had the 100% renewable energy electricity accounts. This one was approved or recommended to the Board of Supervisors with no changes, but we did add language to clarify that the county will also enroll accounts for building outside of Valley Clean Energy's territory in Pacific gas and electric green energy programs, because we thought that was also important clarification from the commission discussion. And last but not least, home energy labeling was the fourth project description. And that project description was recommended to the board on the condition that the staff communicate the commission's concern about the project creating a burden for low-income families to the Board of Supervisors. So we will make sure that concern is relayed. And we also added language stating the county will develop a system for measuring greenhouse gas emissions. So I'll stop there for a second. Again, want to reiterate what Kristen said about these are for receive and file only. But that said, if there are questions that you have, we're happy to answer about those 4 project descriptions. And it looks like Commission Member Reed might have a question. Did you want to call on members? Chairman Bendo?
Sure, Commissioner Reed.
Hi, I apologize for the oversight, but and because I moved the adoption of the minutes, I overlooked the fact that my vote on the item regarding energy labeling is not correctly recorded. I voted no on that item. And it was recorded in the minutes as a yes.
Yeah, that's an important change. So do we, Taro, need to go back on the minutes, or do we just modify the minutes and ask for another motion?
Taro.
Thank you. I think the comment has been noted. We will make sure that the final minutes reflect that.
Thank you. I trust that process.
So just for the sake of transparency, and Charlie, apologize for adding to your workload, but it might be maybe a good idea when you do the correction to just maybe just send an email for our own record. Or it's going to be on the website, so it's going to be updated on the website, so that should be fine. Thank you. Yes, Supervisor Provenza.
Thank you. Patria, I just had a brief question. I noticed that on one proposal, the thrust is to get the grant funding first and then use American Rescue Act funding if there's funds remaining. Others, the American Rescue Act funding is up front with a search for grants to follow. What was the thinking in that? Was it the availability of grants or likelihood of obtaining grants? What was the thinking as to how you put the order?
Yeah, that's a great question. So definitely for the ones where, well, first of all, the subcommittee, you and Supervisor Taylor adopted the policy of trying to leverage the American Rescue Plan funds to maximize impact. So that has been staff's goal, is to evaluate and very carefully allocate the American Rescue Plan funds and to apply for grants whenever possible. So yes, in the case where grant funding is recommended, staff believe that there is a very good chance that we will be able to match it with a grant and therefore minimize the need for American Rescue Plan funding. And then a second consideration was, for example, with the rebate outreach program, that money is going to come out fast from the state government. And so since the goal there is to make sure that as many low-income households are applying for the rebate as possible, staff discussed that given the urgency, so the criteria here was urgency, given the urgency of that particular item, that they would recommend American Rescue Plan funds. So that's really about just making sure that's more of a timing issue than an availability of grant funds, simply because it's so important to make sure that we're ready to tell all the households in Yolo County that those rebates are available.
Thank you.
And then, of course, the Board of Supervisors has to approve any American Rescue Plan fund allocation. So there's always more room for additional discussion. And I don't know, Kristen or Taro, if you wanted to add to that answer. Okay, I got a thumbs up from Taro. Do I get a thumbs up from Kristen too?
Okay,
all
thank
right.
you.
All right, good.
I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
So normally we take public comment only at the end of an agenda item, but we have 2 hands raised, and I think in reaction to what was heard. So I want to ask, and especially Taro and Kristen, if we should allow public comment at this point and then again at the end, or how do we proceed?
It's at your discretion, Madam Chair.
And you know, I knew you were going to say that. I was looking for help. So I want to be mindful of the expert from Solano and Yolo air quality management. And so members of the public, I will actually ask for your patience because you're on a time constraint. So one of our experts is able to chip in. And so please remember your comment, hold it in, and we'll get to you. And Petrea or Kristen, you have the floor again. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to keep on going, not seeing any other questions about the adopted or the project descriptions that have been recommended to the Board of Supervisors. And I will go right into the next 3 project descriptions, which we staff are looking for commission feedback on, similar to last time, and expecting a robust discussion. We are going to start with the Yolo agricultural equipment retrofit program. We do have a representative from the Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District here to answer questions that staff are unable to answer. And I also wanted to stay up front that as a result of some conversations we had after we sent out the agenda, I'm going to propose 2 changes to this project description based on those conversations, and I'm going to propose them verbally. So I will try to speak very slowly so those changes are clear. They're pretty straightforward. This proposed early action will expand the Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District's funding for agricultural replacement measures for emission reductions, which is called the Farmer Program, or other programs that accomplish similar objectives by providing additional funding to increase opportunities for Yolo County farmers. And here is one of the first changes. We wanted to add language to the first sentence of the project description that states to replace gas-powered equipment with electric equipment. And the reason for that clarification is that this program also funds diesel to diesel retrofits. And since the goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and there's very limited funding potentially available for this type of program, we wanted to clarify in the project description that it is to replace gas-powered equipment with electric equipment. Okay. So as you may or may not know, the Farmer Program provides funding to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from agricultural harvesting equipment, heavy duty trucks, irrigation pump engines, tractors, and other equipment. We do have 4 criteria in here that will prioritize funding for Yolo County farmers who meet certain criteria. The first is that they're considered historically underserved. The second is that they're most impacted by COVID-19. The third is that they're small farming operations. And the fourth is it's farming operations where equipment retrofitting would have the largest greenhouse gas emission reduction impact. I also wanted to add another element here that again is not written down, but that I'm recommending the commission include after that sentence in the project description, which is the action will focus on replacing equipment such as utility task vehicles with electric alternatives for which the district can easily quantify emission reduction. And the reason for that is that given the small amount of money that is potentially available for this program is that the Air Quality Management District and Yolo County staff have talked and agreed that it would be helpful to focus on certain types of equipment, such as utility task vehicles. If you replace those gas-powered utility task vehicles with electric alternatives, you can very easily measure the emission reduction and potentially also encourage others to do a similar type of transition. So Obviously, the good news is that this year in the proposed 22-23 state budget, there's more money for the farmer program than has ever been proposed. So I think it's unknown how much the Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District will receive of that allocation if it is approved by the legislature. But it does look like the action before you today to prioritize this program is timely, because it will be consistent with the state's emphasis on this program as well. Obviously, it's consistent with existing plans. We do think that it can potentially have a benefit to disadvantaged or underrepresented farmers, and are hoping that it'll be the start of a very good partnership with the Air Quality Management District to start working with farmers on all sorts of programs in the future. So this may just be the starting point as an early action, and also just to keep in mind for the that we can do more in the climate action and adaptation plan as well. This is just the first step in developing a partnership and working with farmers to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So with that, I will turn it over to the commission for any questions you have about this particular project description.
Vice Chair Kim.
Yes, thank you, Petrea. And the two additional changes seem very reasonable and make sense to provide more flexibility. And also, I think the criteria that that you shared, the 4 criteria, and adding the additional criteria with that specific focus on the utility test vehicles makes sense. I guess my question is, now that there's 5 criteria, are certain criteria points could be weighted differently, or is that up to the air quality district team?
So that's a great question. So there is only going to be 4 criteria. Well, I guess it's not necessarily criteria that fit that change that I made. It's just indicating the potential to focus on certain equipment, but it's not limiting it to that at this point, just so you know. So it's not a 5th criteria yet, although it is, Yolo County staff wanted to potentially indicate that they would focus on equipment like that to have maximum impact. I would actually, Kristen, I don't know if you or Tara want to ask the Air Quality Management District for an answer to this question, but I know that we need to do some more work as staff to flesh out the criteria. And I imagine that once this project description is approved, that work will happen.
Okay, thanks.
Petrea, do you have more to add before? Okay, so I'm asking again, commissioners, you have any additional question, especially for the expert who's with us until 5? Yes, Commissioner Kim.
Yes, since we do have the expert from the Air Quality Management District, I'm very happy with the term historically underserved, but I guess that's a USDA term. Does the county and or the Air Quality Management District already have a sense of how many farmers that are historically underserved, like the target market? Or is that something that's going to have to be evaluated later? Or is it going to be like, oh, we actually have thousands of farmers that are, that fit this criteria per the USDA definition?
I'm assuming that's a question for the Air District, right? Is that okay, Chair, to direct that to the Air District?
Yes, that was what Commissioner Kim expressed here.
Just allow Stephanie Holiday to begin speaking.
Hi, good afternoon. Stephanie Holiday at Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District. So the district doesn't use the term historically underserved with any of our grants. We actually look at environmental justice terms. And so that was something I spoke with Kristen about that would need to be fleshed out by the commission. as what your factors would be for quote unquote historically underserved. If you wanted to follow the USDA's guidelines on that, or if you wanted to determine your own. Just a few concepts that we kind of discussed was, would it be the nationality or cultural background of a farmer? Would it be the size of the farm? Because sometimes historically underserved could indicate, smaller farmers have a harder time receiving grant funding than larger farmers who can pay for people to write grants. It can mean a lot of different things. And so we're happy to work with you guys on that. We have a lot of tools through the federal government and the state that are given to us as far as different factors that go into that. There's a number of pollutant criteria and sustainability factors that we could look at. There's some great screening tools that are available and some ideas that we've just had in our own background and interaction with environmental justice in the state. So we're happy to work with you on that. And I think it's a really a broad definition that maybe we can all, work together to define what we really want to target that for. But I think as you start getting applications too, in my experience thus far, you see, you receive a story from an applicant oftentimes of, I've applied X number of times to a grant and never received the funding, or, the economic, underserved kind of communities as well. And so those are things that you guys will ultimately have to decide, but we're happy to work with you in any way that we can.
Thank you very much, Stephanie Holiday, and Commissioner Kim for asking, because that question was on my mind as well. And I believe you have another question, follow-up question.
Yes, thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing. Actually, now after you said that, I did recall people who had problems with the USDA definition of historically underserved, because oftentimes that could mean that could discount other community groups. So I guess one of talking to some farmers who would consider themselves historically underserved, one of their issues is they just don't know when any of these grants are even available. Is there any indication or like that in the future, if a program like this were to get additional funding, that there would be potentially more outreach to historically underserved communities or other communities that, just they may have never applied for a grant like this because they just had no idea that something like this would even exist?
Yeah, we are currently working with expanded grant opportunities that we've been able to secure in the last year. We are working to really establish some better relationships with some of our agricultural bureaus and agencies to kind of try and figure out how we can reach those underserved people. We have seen the same kind of experience where people just don't understand timelines of the program because they haven't been involved in them previously. It tends to be just like a school year, right? If you're a mom, you know when school goes in and you know when it comes out, but if you don't have kids, you don't know. And so figuring out a way to get the information to these people that can really benefit the most from it is something that we're currently in the process of doing. And so part of that is getting a little creative, I think, and that's something that we're definitely willing to partner with you guys, as well as you guys have identified the Yolo County Farm Bureau and other agencies, but we're happy to work to foster those relationships. Part of it is just an equity issue of making sure that everything's in the language in which they receive information. Part of it is being in the right place to deliver the information. So knowing if they're going to go to the feed store and we need to have the information at the feed store, that we have it there. If we need to know who they're selling their product to get their contact information, then doing it that way. So kind of some creative solutions are what we're working on here. And so it's definitely a start. But as we go through this process, we are 100% on board to develop those creative channels to connect with those people, because I think it's not going to be our run-of-the-mill communications plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I do have a couple of questions. So you mentioned, working with some partners in helping get the word out and reaching to, the historically underserved farmers, help you identifying them. I was wondering if you could let us know who some of these partners are. And I was wondering if CAF is one of them. And my second question, I was wondering if, the district is set up to help the applicants, fill the forms. Some of them, like you said, might have never, filed an application, a grant application before. And I know that several are understaffed, when it comes to the workload that they have and being able to keep up with administrative deadlines. So yeah, look forward to your answers. Thank you.
Did you ask what was the agency you wanted to know if we were partnering with? I'm sorry.
CAF.
CAF?
Yes.
The Community Alliance on Family Farmers, right?
Okay.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah, we have not reached out to CAF yet, but I wrote it down so that I can. I'm fairly new to Yolo County. I'm working with Yolo County, and so I've reached out to our farm bureaus and our commissioners first. We've reached out to a few of our, like the almond board, the almond growers associations, things like that, because we are in the process of applying for additional grant funding for some of our agricultural producers here. And with regards to assisting in applications, I've been doing that. I am a local, daughter of a local farmer, and so I understand that sometimes the lack of personnel on both sides is really difficult. And so we are always happy to help people walk through the paperwork and explain to them exactly what they need. We've gone step by step, literally had people call us and say, okay, what's the next thing I need to do? Okay, go take a picture of this part of your tractor and send it to me. So we can help people as much or as little as they need. I think that we're in a very unique position currently where, because we are growing the program, we are really taking this as a feedback step. And so I think for the most part, we won't have any issue offering that aid. We're also really developing some tutorials and some guides, and we've held quite a few workshops on how to fill out information. We're always available to respond to email, and we're always open to suggestions. So if we need to have a night at the Farm Bureau to help people fill out these applications, we're welcome to do that. We're willing to do whatever people need, yeah, obviously within reason, but we're definitely open to learning how to meet people where they are so that we can get this into the right hands. And so that's what we've been doing with our farmer program this year, and what we would offer in administering this program as well.
I think there's one more question, two more questions.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Just wondering if, I know with the defined, the definitions of underserved or what, I know that's kind of a fluid definition, but would you guys also be considering farmers that are more like community garden folks or urban farmers that are not necessarily like established out on a farm? I'm just wondering if those are also folks you'll be serving.
So that's a great question. I think we lost our chair, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not going to pretend to fill her shoes, but at the same time, I will call on people until she gets back. So Stephanie, you might have an answer to that question, but I did want to make a few clarifying remarks in response to all of these questions. First of all, I just noticed that under benefits to disadvantaged vulnerable communities, it says underrepresented farmers, and then we need to use the same term. So if we're going to use underserved, we should use underserved. And then I did want to reiterate that I did talk to Kristen prior to this meeting, and she wanted me to communicate that staff will work on better defining what underserved means for the purposes of this. And so I think Commission Member Serena, that will help to answer your question. We will take that question and then evaluate that as part of developing that definition for underserved. And I would just ask that when whoever makes the motion, make sure it includes the change to change underrepresented to underserved in the other section. I did want to also add to answer Supervisor Provenza's question before for this particular project about funding, is that one of the reasons why this one is recommended for potential American Rescue Plan funding, again, no commitment, but potentially, is because staff don't anticipate there will be grant programs to help provide more money to a grant program. So we just think that it's highly unlikely that there will be a grant. So I just wanted to add that additional information into the discussion. And okay, we have you back, Chair Mavondo, so I'll turn it back over to you. Just so you know, I'll reiterate what you missed is that Commission Member Serena asked if community gardens or urban farmers would also be considered underserved. And my response was that we would take that a question under consideration when we're developing that definition. And then Commission Member Alvarez has a question that hasn't been
Okay.
called up.
Thank you. So I switched my internet network. So Commissioner Alvarez, you have the floor. I was hoping that Stephanie will be able to hear also feedback from the public, but commissioners take precedent. Commissioner Alvarez.
Yeah, thank you. It's not a question, it's a comment. The recommendation to reach out to the National Center for Appropriate Technology, NCAT. They also, in addition to CAF, they also work with underserved farmers as well. So that's, and actually, I believe they still share an office outside of Davis with CAF. So it would be.
Oh, that makes it easy.
Thank you, Commissioner Alvarez. Commissioner Serena, your hand is still up. Would you like to add something? No? Okay. So at this time, I will turn to members of the public and we'll come back to the commissioners. Lupita Torres, thank you for joining us. Would you like to, do you have a question or comment for this agenda item? You have 3 minutes. Please state your name and a brief introduction. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Lupita Torres. Thank you for having this meeting today. And I had a number of things that I was going to be asking about. I know you guys are not allowed to respond, but I did want to make some comments. In regards to outreach and alternative communication, it's very important that this commission does its best to outreach not only to members of the general public, but specifically to members of low-income and underserved communities that should be having more input into these county discussions. In regards to the electric vehicle program outreach, again, reaching out to some of the most marginalized and disadvantaged communities would be suggested, and as well as support with filling out applications, because even though you do provide these communities that type of information, it's the actual filling out of the actual application. There may be some people that have a disadvantage, as if they're English learners, or maybe the ability to understand how to use online things, technical difficulties using the computer. So that kind of really hands-on support is going to be what really gets those most needed communities to, and also educational campaign regarding electric vehicles. For example, I didn't know until I spoke to an owner of an electric vehicle how much money you actually save, and the fact that a lot of socioeconomically disadvantaged communities are paying basically what you would pay in a car payment a month for gas. And if you're doing a lot of in-town driving, one vehicle owner was telling me that he only spends $10 on gas. And so when you talk to people like that and educate them regarding that, an educational campaign is extremely important for socioeconomically disadvantaged communities, because guess what? We buy cars and we spend a lot of money on cars because a lot of us, we travel a lot, we take our kids to school. And I see a lot of people, even though they may not be able to afford a lot of material things, they do spend a lot of money on cars. And so if we can get some of these communities moving towards electric vehicle with an educational campaign promoting why it's better on gas to save, and also, just explaining the differences between the plugs. I didn't even realize that there's different types of plugs for each vehicle and why that's important, because there's going to be some communities that have access to home plugging in and some communities that are not, like for example, an apartment dweller is not going to be able to plug their vehicle into their garage because they don't have a garage to plug their vehicle into. So those kinds of educational campaign things we should take note of. Another thing in regards to the community gardens.
You have a few seconds left, Lupita.
Yes.
Just so you know.
What she was saying is right on point with having the people that have community gardens and the underserved communities is important to really have different creative ways of embracing what we have discussions on the type of ways that we grow food, because for a lot of socioeconomically disadvantaged communities, again, we live in apartments. So a lot of us have community gardens or things of that nature where we grow our food. It's very different the way urban folks grow their food. So we have to take that into account. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lupita. Stephanie, I know you have to leave right about now, so I'll take the next public comments. And I will kindly ask Kristen or Charlie, if there is something that would be useful to Stephanie, please take note and make sure she has access to what was shared. Okay, so I believe the next person is Christine Shoemaker. Christine, it's good to have you with us. I'll let you once again state your name and a brief introduction, and you have the floor. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this is Christine Shoemaker. I'm a resident of Woodland and a long-term climate activist, as well as a retired plant molecular biologist. And I'm assuming it's okay now to make comments that go back to the first 4 as well. Is that correct, or did you want me to wait to the end if it deals with the first 4?
I believe you can just go for it.
Okay,
thank you.
So thank you. As you know, I'm very interested in the one on 100% renewable electricity. And at the last meeting, we noted that the alignment with the climate action plan just had to do with electric vehicles. And I had sent in to Petrea and others that actually in the climate action plan, there's something that says that through community choice aggregation, that 25% of the county should be relying on 100% renewable by 2020. And so I think that fits better with what actually is in there. So I'm hoping that you can put that in there, because I think that makes a stronger argument to the board. So that's my, it's a sort of a specific request, but I'm very into this particular item. So I think if that's in there rather than just electric vehicles, it makes it a stronger argument to the board. And the other thing that I would just say is I would just label this 100% renewable electricity and leave it at that. Energy and electricity are kind of redundant. Electricity is a subset of energy. We're just talking about electricity here. So thank you very much. And I might make a comment clear at the end when you get to all the 7, but this was what was on my mind now. Thank you, NJ.
Thank you very much, Christine. Petrea, do you have it all? You don't need anyone to repeat what was said, right?
Yeah, and I know we're not responding, but I did forget to mention verbally, and I was supposed to, so I apologize for that, that we wanted to add those references to the climate action plan. So I apologize for that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. At this point of the meeting, I want to acknowledge that Supervisor Provenza had to leave early, so he left at 5 p.m. and Deputy Sheila Allen is representing him. So I think you have the floor. So we're listening to you, Petrea. Thank you again.
Okay, so at this point, if there's no other questions on the Yolo agricultural equipment retrofit program, we're looking for a motion to recommend that project description to the Board of Supervisors. And I would just remind the commission to make sure to add in their motion to change underrepresented to underserved in the one section of the plan. Project description.
Okay. Will someone want to make a motion? Yes, from Commissioner Kim.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to recommend the proposal. Actually, it just went away from my screen. Oh, right here. The Yolo agriculture equipment retrofit program to the Board of Supervisors, noting that we would like to amend under represented to underserved.
And also I forgot the other 2 changes that I presented verbally in the beginning too. I apologize.
In the other 2 changes, which I wrote down here, but now.
Yeah, the first one, just to be clear for the commission, is that at the end of the first sentence, after Yolo County farmers, to replace gas-powered equipment with electric equipment. And the second change is after the sentence that ends with would have the largest greenhouse gas emission reduction impact, add a new sentence, which is the action will focus on replacing equipment such as utility task vehicles with electric alternatives for which the district can easily quantify emission reduction.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
I second.
Okay, Commissioner Reed did a second on that one. Members of the public, do you have an additional comment before we place it to a vote?
I'm seeing no hands raised.
Okay, so no hands. So we are going to vote on it. Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Dattel,
Aye.
Commissioner Ullman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kim,
Aye.
Commissioner Serena,
Aye.
Commissioner White,
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Bennett is absent, I believe. Commissioner Britton is absent. I vote aye. This motion passes unanimously.
And I'll just say that I wasn't called on, but I vote aye as well.
Commissioner Austin, I'm so sorry. Thank you. So the motion passes unanimously. That is confirmed. Also, yes, we're not answering public comments, but Petrea, I know you took notes of the recommendation to use 100% renewable electricity, right?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
I got those in the notes.
So I think we are ready for the next agenda item.
Okay, so the next one has a new title. So hopefully we'll remember it from the previous meeting. Let me just really quickly remind you of the previous title, just so that it's very clear. So we're going back to, just so everyone knows, the inventory and feasibility study to remove fossil fuels from Yolo County operations. And when you selected this as a project priority in February, the project described the removal of all fossil fuels from Yolo County operations. So Yolo County staff discussed this proposal internally because, as you probably know, it applies to all departments. And so they had to have some quick conversations across departments to see what was feasible. And they realized that Yolo County needs an inventory of all fossil fuel uses in county operations, as well as the existing electrical system service capacity before the county can commit to removing all fossil fuels. So that was an important piece of information for us to have. And they also need to conduct a feasibility study, which will include an evaluation of building readiness to electrify based on current electrical capacity and total energy requirements, priorities for electrification, cost estimates, and a proposed process for measuring greenhouse gas emission reduction, proposed timeline, and potential funding sources. So as you can see, we're being very upfront with you that we had to walk this one back. It was much more complicated and than we originally anticipated. And so staff are recommending, instead of just a project description to remove fossil fuels from Yolo County operations, that they take this first step of completing an inventory and a feasibility study. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that project description, but I think I'll stop here and open it up to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Petrea. Do we have any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Ullman.
Yes, and my question is, and it doesn't have to be answered in detail here, I guess, but it's in regard to when this was discussed across the departments, was there any indication of the complexity of this type of evaluation, how long it might take?
I'm going to turn that over to either Kristen or Taro to answer.
I can answer because I was involved in those conversations, and no, there wasn't really. It was more focused on what Petrea mentioned. We got a sort of a reality check. Our facilities in general are pretty old. And what we have learned over the years, now that we were able to bring this forward to the right departments, is that so many of the things that we want to do that are more modern, retrofit, specifically talk about charging stations for electric vehicles, what we realized is that the cost of the charger is a drop in the bucket compared to the cost that we need to do to retrofit the buildings to accept those new loads. So it's really a source of that, but we didn't get into the details of what, you know, the study itself. But we did recognize that there's interest at every department level to move in that direction, but we really need to figure out exactly where we are today. Thank you.
Thank you, Taro. Commissioner White.
So Mark, I'm going to answer because this is actually what I do for a living. So it usually takes us for a big city or a big county, somewhere between 3 and 6 months to complete the whole inventory. However, big caveat here, it can take PG&E up to a year to get us the information from their end. And that is our real roadblock. So we can figure out everything from the PG&E meter to the building, but once it's behind the meter, all bets are off. We've done these inventories and calculations in as little as 3 months. We've had one that took 18 months because the city, which was on the East Coast, just didn't even know how many vehicles it owned. So we literally had to go find their vehicles.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Commissioner Ullman, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I could just address that very briefly here. As I was anticipating, a thorough evaluation like this might involve such things as grid modifications and things of that sort, which would have to come from utility. Also, it's unaccustomed terrain to be exploring, but so I appreciate those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ullman. Any additional questions or feedback or reaction?
Not seeing any other hands raised, Madam Chair.
So members of the public, do you have any question on this? So Christine Shoemaker, you have the floor again. Thank you.
Yes, so this is Christine Shoemaker, and I want to thank you for adding the feasibility study, because I probably should have done that the same thing on my own home, finding out that from going from a 100 amp panel to a 200 amp panel took me from April to November, because my wires were direct bury and we had trenching and we had to move the panel and we had to take parts of the garage out. And so just going from 100 to a 200 amp panel took me that 6 to 8 months. And it should not have taken that long if certain things going through the utilities didn't take so long from point A to point B. So I think that's very good to do that. My other suggestion is, having gone through that, if after you've gotten partway through the evaluation, you think, well, maybe let's start on this one. It might not be bad to start on one to see what you can get done before you get all of them evaluated. Chris White might disagree with that, but that's my comment. Anyway, very glad to see the feasibility in there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. Our next public commenter is Juliette Beck. And Juliette, I will ask you also to please read the comment that you wrote in the chat. So we are not able to react to what's written in the chat per Brown Act rules. So please share the resource out loud. This will also be very helpful to members of the public who are listening to this meeting and are not able to, to be online at the same time as we are. Juliette, you have the floor and you have 3 minutes starting now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Mavondo. I'm Juliette Beck, Yolo Climate Action Advocate. I will refer to the chat. I mentioned that there's a helpful resource provided by UC Davis, Christine Brinkley. I've been looking at it throughout the pandemic, that evaluated what the vulnerabilities were for small and disadvantaged minority and historically marginalized farmers. And it just is a very short document that I think might help the Air District, the Yolo Solano Air Quality District, with their outreach, because it lists a number of the farms in Yolo County that would probably be in that category. So I wanted to draw attention to that document. And then my comment around what we're discussing about this important program is to just underscore the importance of working with the different agencies and the opportunity for the county to provide leadership and education and awareness to, I'm thinking specifically school districts. And I know that there's probably some reluctance to reach out beyond to other jurisdictions. But I just recently saw that DJUSD bought a giant, huge black Suburban vehicle, brand new, right out of CarMax, huge gas guzzling suburban vehicle. And I'm just wondering, if the county could send some kind of signals to the, to districts like DJUSD to say, hey, the direction that the county is taking here, the priorities are to really encourage across the board electrification of our fleets. We want to work together with the school districts and other agencies to support this, where there's opportunities to apply for joint grants, et cetera, et cetera. So I just think, we need to send that message out very quickly, and wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliette. Do we have any additional comments from the public? I don't see any. Okay. So, Petrea, I think you have the floor again. Maybe Commissioner Ullman, did you want to add something?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, at this point, I think we're just looking for a motion to recommend the inventory and feasibility study to the Board of Supervisors as an early action, but I appreciate this good discussion.
Thank you. Who volunteers to make a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion, and I just want to acknowledge Ms. Beck's contributions, and I get to work daily as I co-lead a research center with Dr. Catherine Brinkley, and would be happy to connect the county with her and explore this resource more to inform this process. But with that, I'll just say that I will make a motion to move staff recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner Austin. Do we have a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
That was Commissioner Ullman. Members of the public, before we put it to a vote, do you have any additional comment? I do not see any. Let's vote. Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner Dutton?
Aye.
Commissioner Ullman?
Aye.
Vice Chair Kim?
Aye.
Commissioner Serena?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Austin?
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Alvarez?
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett is absent. Commissioner Britton is absent. I vote aye. This motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. Petrea?
Great, wonderful, thank you. Okay, we're on to our last one. You guys are being very efficient today. This is the Zero Emission Vehicle Master Plan, and it is attachment J. And as you may recall, when you selected this one as an early action, the commission decided to integrate the Zero Emission Vehicle Master Plan and the electric vehicle charging stations and outreach proposals into one project description. So that is what you have before you. And this action proposes that the county would add electric vehicle charging stations at locations in the unincorporated areas of the county and take other actions to encourage the adoption of zero emission vehicles. This project also incorporates essential electric bicycles access for farm workers and rural residents. This came up as another commission comment. I did want to say that is incorporated in this way, which is that this master plan will include a recommendation as to whether to establish zero emission vehicle mobility services, including electric bikes, in the unincorporated area to enable residents, particularly farm workers and rural residents, to use clean mobility options to meet their travel demands. And these mobility services may focus exclusively on helping low-income households and disadvantaged communities. So it's actually a little broader than just the essential bikes, but actually allowing the study to look at all mobility options, not just bikes, and see what makes the most sense for these populations and make a recommendation as to what the county should do to move forward. The other elements of the plan that I wanted to mention before I open it up to questions is that this is at a minimum too. I wanted to make sure that you understand this is a minimum. The county will work to develop a more detailed scope of work if they do an RFP for this plan, but it will include an analysis of the gaps in the electric vehicle charging system and recommendations for the siting of additional charging stations. It will include an inventory of existing county fleet zero emission vehicle needs and a timeline for transitioning that fleet. And finally, and this keeps coming up over and over again, so hopefully it's a recognition that we're listening, is we'll include a community outreach strategy developed in partnership with community-based organizations that would include at a minimum advertising the state's electric vehicle rebate programs and adding interpretive signage at charging stations to educate residents about clean transportation options. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions you have about the electric vehicle master plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Datel.
Yeah, I had a question about the partners who are listed. And I'm wondering why we don't include the Yolo County Transportation District. They are already, moving toward some mobility services that might indeed, be moved over to the EV category. And also perhaps the UC Davis Institute for Transportation Studies. They specifically have faculty who are working on, for example, shared EV services in small towns in the San Joaquin Valley. So let's tap into that expertise for this wonderful proposal.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Datel. Commissioner Kim?
Yes, also wonderful proposal. Another partner to consider is called La Cooperativa Campesina de California. And they have been working on trying to get electric shuttles for farm workers in rural communities. All throughout California, they're based out of Woodland though. And I've talked to Marco Lizarraga, who is their executive director, and who again emphasized that one of the biggest things that farm workers can use assistance is with mobility. And so any effort that Yolo County can move the needle here, I think would be a wonderful move for environmental justice, noting that we believe many would say farm workers are some of the most vulnerable communities, especially with in Yolo County when we think about climate impacts. On that note, I think they've already won some grant for a shuttle service in Yolo. So I think checking in with them so we don't duplicate and that we can really account for their successes in the gap analysis would be great.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Kim. Petrea, I was wondering if you'd like to react to the two comments you just heard, feedback.
I think these are all great comments. I suggest including it as part of a motion to add those partnerships. And we'll definitely check in with to make sure we understand the scope of the grant.
Thank you. Commissioner Austin, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely agree with the last two comments. I appreciate that. Similarly, I'm happy to make some connections because we're doing equity work on transportation equity with the Institute for Transportation Studies. So Petrea, happy to follow up with that as well. And I'll also underscore while I personally am a fan of e-bikes, when we're thinking about some of these, so-called disadvantaged and vulnerable communities, the importance of transit really can't be understated. And one great example is already given with farm workers, but also our aging populations and folks who living with mobility restrictions. And so just thinking through how can we best partner with transit that can include, as we've already said, Yolo County. We also have micro transit here in West Sacramento. So just thinking about some of those, a variety of ways that we can look at electrification and shared approaches to addressing some of our transit needs. And I'll say too that I'm in support of this proposal moving forward to the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Commissioner Austin. I want to second the comment that you made regarding the importance of access to mobility for the farm workers and especially electric vehicles. Also feedback I heard from small farmers. Commissioner White, you have the floor.
Thanks, and I'm going to be the thorn in the side, the stick in the mud about this one. So typically a zero emission vehicle master plan, what you have written here is funded by Caltrans through a Sustainable Communities grant. And it's really specific on what it funds. It can be bikes, it's always transit, it's always trucks, and it's vehicles. So this master plan is really looking at how you're putting in infrastructure to support a transfer to vehicles. What you all are describing as a public charging plan, and a public charging plan typically is funded by the Energy Commission or SACOG, and it looks at the people first, but it's very focused on personal mobility, not trucks, not buses, not things. So the grants from Caltrans for Sustainable Communities and the ZEV Master Plan, their max funding is $250,000. So that's the peak. The Energy Commission, their max funding is $100,000.
Okay, great.
So just think about those, you know, kind of what's the objective here? Do you want to figure out where charging and hydrogen infrastructure goes in to support lots of vehicle adoption? Or do you want to figure out where to put in public charging to help more people move differently?
So do you think we need to change that tonight in this to decide what the objective is? Or do you think that we can fund all 4 of these components with different grants and or ARP funds?
You know, speaking again, as the person who does this type of work, the quick money, the low hanging fruit is a Caltrans grant to do a ZEV master plan.
Okay.
And there's so much work already going on. You should be able to get that done for, you know, again, speaking as the person who does this work, I would certainly take your $250,000, but there's been so much work done already in West Sacramento, in Davis, in Woodland, and through that SACOG grant. You could probably get this done for $100,000 in 8 months.
Because it's just the unincorporated area and you only need to know where the gaps are in the unincorporated area, right? Okay.
Right. And we're also seeing all the gaps for, you know, the DC fast charging coming in through the alternative fuel corridor and the funding that's coming in. So to you know, just be clear with everybody, tonight I am presenting Davis's public charging plan. So we've been working on this already, and we know where some of those gaps exist because we have to look at the big county to figure out how the city of Davis plugs the gaps. And same thing with the city of Woodland.
So could you one more time for me? You said the zero emission vehicle plan is different than the public charging plan. So could you describe again how the difference?
Right. So the way that this is named is zero emission master plan. It's charging stations and hydrogen stations for all manner of vehicle, from a skateboard to a interstate truck. And it's how you where you would put in infrastructure to enable more zero emission vehicles of all kinds to travel. A public charging plan, which is kind of what you have, gaps in existing vehicles, inventory of ZEV needs, that is more of a public charging plan, because it's very specific on charging stations and it's very specific to light duty vehicles and bikes.
Okay, that's helpful. So what I'm hearing is, just to make sure this project description covers the actual zero emission vehicle plan, I'm looking to Taro and Kristen to be okay with this too, but is to add like a number 5 that is, you know, identifying these charging and hydrogen stations for all vehicles, or making that clear in the project description, that that's an element to this, right? Because we can piece together funding for all 5 parts of it through different sources and or fund what's left over with American Rescue Plan. But we need to be very clear that there's these separate parts that can be funded through different grants.
Yeah, I'm thinking you really want to go with the ZEV master plan and add the element of looking at mobility services or mobility hubs that can enable multimodal travel.
I apologize, Commissioner White, for interrupting, but I just want to remind our fellow commissioners, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself so we don't have background noise. Thank you. Commissioner White, you have the floor again, sorry.
No, and I don't mean to write this for everybody else. So I am now thinking with my worker bee hat on.
Well, what I just want to make sure I understand the comment, because two right now is an inventory of the existing county fleet ZEV needs. So I think that still needs to stay, even if they fund it separately, not with a grant. Number 3 is a community outreach strategy that would advertise rebate. That's separate. That needs to stay, right? And then 4, you already said is okay, which is the ZEV mobility services. So the issue is really with number 1. and making sure that that's more clear?
Yeah, so that number one should see the gaps in existing infrastructure actually. And I'm sorry, I can send you the wording from Caltrans that they use, but it is analyzing the existing infrastructure and the gaps and recommending where charging station, publicly accessible charging stations and hydrogen stations would fill the gap.
Okay. But we can still apply for the Energy Commission grant separately if we wanted a public charging plan. I just want to make sure that this project description allows the county to apply for both of those programs.
Yes, you couldn't use the same match funding, but the ZEV master plan is a bigger bucket of money, and it's much more broad. And in some of the projects we're doing now, there's a lot of public engagement. We're doing one in Madera County that's lots of engagement with rural farmers who operate their own fuel depots. So all of that can go into there. So I would actually stick with the ZEV master plan, but add the words that it is a master plan for trucks, buses, not just the words bikes and cars.
I get it. Yeah, okay. Got it.
And then the other thing is in the background section where it has the governor's executive order that was actually passed into law. So we're going to have to change that to update the statute.
To the code section. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I have to dig for that a little bit. It was new. It's new and recent.
Okay.
Great catch. Thank you so much, Commissioner White. Do we have any additional feedback, comments, or reactions from commissioners? Okay, I don't see any members of the public. I believe Juliette Beck would like to speak. Juliette, you have the floor. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, this is such an exciting development. I'm so thrilled to see all of this move forward. And I just wanted to put in kind of a plug for access to nature areas and thinking about charging stations at like the Cache Creek Nature Preserve, and so that we can have an integrated, and then we can integrate, eventually with school buses or other places that are able to, places that people want to go in the county, that it's a destination, so that they can access and build our ecotourism industry. Might also be a great way to think about it in addition to the importance of prioritizing the communities that you discussed already, that have traditionally a lack of mobility and access to mobility. But I'm also thinking about like farm worker families who their children need access to nature areas and places. So maybe transit that would, electric transit that would support a variety of needs, but to be integrated with this vision of sustainability and health and well-being, to think about our nature areas as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliette. Any additional comments from the public?
You not see any additional hands raised, Madam Chair?
Okay, thank you. Betraya, I think you have the floor again. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so we're looking for a motion on this one, and I'm hearing 3 changes so far. I'll go with the easy ones first. Number 1 is to add the partnerships that were discussed by the commission members. Number 2 is to update the executive order reference to the appropriate code section since it's law. And then the 3rd is, and I'm going to go on a limb here and just say, so we don't have to wordsmith it, is to say to amend the project description to be consistent with language in the Caltrans Sustainability Communities grant and the Energy Commission's grant programs for public charging and other ZEV funding opportunities. But I will let the commission members decide whether you want to go more specific than
that. I'll let the commissioners, express their thoughts on that. I'm personally in favor of the motion being stated with the addendums that you just mentioned. Any reactions from the commissioners? Is someone ready to make a motion? Yes, Commissioner Dattel.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend the zero emission vehicle master plan with the changes that we add some additional partnerships as named, that we update the executive order to its legislative status, and that we make sure that we have in the language what's appropriate so that we can apply for the relevant grants from Caltrans and from the Energy Commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Dattel. Do we have a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
That's Commissioner Ullman. Thank you. Members of the public, would you like to comment on this motion? I don't see any hand raised. Let's vote. Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
Commissioner Dattel.
Aye.
Commissioner Ullman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kim.
Aye.
Commissioner Serena.
Aye.
Commissioner White.
Aye.
Commissioner Austin.
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Aye.
I vote aye. This motion passes unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, everyone. That's the last one that I have. Nice work.
Great. Thank you, Petrea. This was very concise, but also very precise and in-depth. I see that we do have a comment from Christine Shoemaker, and I will allow it. Christine, you have the floor.
So thank you. I just wanted to make an overall comment. I'm very excited to see that all 7 of these are ready to go to the board on May 24th. And when it comes to thinking about communication, I think it would be nice if there was some sort of a press release or announcement that the board was going to be considering this on May 24th, so that members of the public who don't necessarily always look at the Board of Supervisors agenda would know that this is coming forward. So I think that would be nice. I'm very happy that all of them have greenhouse gas emissions. I think that's going to be important to look at it down the line. And the other thing is, I hope when we're discussing it with the board, all of these are the first things we have to do, whether it's getting electricity at 100% or getting gas out of buildings. These are all first steps. If we're actually going to get to carbon negative by 2030, all of the electricity in Yolo County has to be 100% renewable. All of the gas has to, or almost all of the gas has to be out of the building. So these are just the first, easiest, but in all of these areas that we've chosen, land use, whatever, these are the first, they all have to go further. So that's just sort of an overall view, but I'm very excited that this is going to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. And Lupita Torres, you have the floor. You have 3 minutes.
Sorry, I had started talking. Always forget that mute button. Thank you, commissioners and staff. I just wanted to add that the board consider when considering marginalized communities, when you're making demands or expectations on energy use. There was a situation I had forgotten to highlight earlier in my public comment, in which Valley Clean Energy had an issue with mutual housing residents. The mutual housing, some of them have solar panels, and they were part of an opt-in or an opt-out program. And what happened is some of the low-income and affordable housing residents, and it wasn't limited to mutual housing. There was other community members that I had seen on Nextdoor, seniors, citizens, and residents with disabilities were complaining about the added cost onto their PG&E bill resulting from being part of this Valley Clean Energy program. And they were having difficulties, especially the Spanish speakers, taking that off their bill. One of the reasons being is that some of these affordable housing residents already have solar panels, and so they shouldn't have to pay extra to get solar energy from when they're already getting it, because the apartments already have the panels. That was a really big cost. I think the county did go ahead and deal with that matter, but I'm not sure if that has applied throughout the county. So when you have things that you have where you opt everybody of the general public in, consider how that's going to affect socioeconomically disadvantaged communities and frontline communities. and have it be opt in rather than opt out, because a lot of the people, they had these really high energy add-on to their bill and they didn't know how to remove it. And then when they did figure out how to remove it, some of the people that answered the phone lines were kind of trying to, I don't know how you would describe it, but basically just say, oh, well, if you get off this program, you're not going to be able to get back on, like trying to convince them to stay in the program. And it was like an added, like in some residents, it was $100 onto their bill. Some of them, it was $35 a month extra. I mean, it was a lot of money. And I know that one of the disabled residents in Davis was complaining that they had some kind of an issue because they had a machine at home that they needed that was needing a lot of energy. And so it resulted in a very high energy cost. And so when you have things like this, especially when I hear about the energy measurement of each household, consider how that might impact people in housing and things like that. Yeah, so I had wanted to mention the Valley Clean Energy because that was resolved with the members of Mutual Housing. But again, I'm not sure how that affected the rest of the populations in Yolo County. And so just have that consideration when you have expectations or demands on low-income residents and frontline communities and how that's going to be disproportionately affect. Another example is when the city of Davis.
You're at the end of your 3 minutes, though.
Okay. Well, this one when you have things that you apply. I know with the blowers, there was an issue too in the city of Davis, and then they were not notified of the changes. And so you have to really consider how these impact the workers and other communities that may not be aware of these types of things, and do outreach. Thank you.
Thank you, Lupita. We appreciate the comment, and we hope that you will join us again at, upcoming meetings. Deputy Sheila Allen, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I just looked up to see when you all were appointed, because I feel like I had just yesterday seen when this commission was starting its work. And by the way, according to the county website, it says in July, which I've been working around county things for a long time, and boy, do things move fast for this group. Well done that you have this coming forward to the board. So we really look forward to that on May 24th. I imagine that it helps to have a consultant along who's helping you work through these things. So well done, Patrea. And I'm so lucky to have some really knowledgeable people on the board who get to give us a little bit of a reality check on when we're heading in the right direction or not. So congratulations to all of you on the work you've done so far.
Sheila, I'm sure I speak for everyone in saying that we appreciate your words. And also, as a reminder, the commission was first formed in July, but not all the commissioners were appointed at the same time. So I just want to again commend our commission for being able to still move things forward while we were also drafting the charter and everything else on it. And again, much appreciation to our consultants. So I think this was the end of public comments. It looks like we don't have any further comment on this agenda item as well. So I suggest that we looked at agenda item number 8, which is a presentation on the history and progress of the climate action efforts in Yolo County, and Michael Cormick will be leading the discussion. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going to share my screen real quick here. You should be seeing my presentation. Is that true?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well then we're off to a good start. Yes, thank you so much. We did a version of this presentation at the ad hoc working group, and the working group all agreed this would be a valuable presentation to bring forward to the larger commission. So we're going to walk through a little bit of the history of climate action planning in Yolo County, not really focusing on the background science and climate change impacts in the county, but more on the actions the county has taken since early in 1980s to actually support some of the early work at a county scale on climate change in California. So the county has a long history of working on climate change. As indicated. So back in 1982, Yolo County adopted its first energy plan, which was an important start to many of the conversations that occurred after. And just kind of reference points, the Kyoto Protocol was signed in 1997, one of the first international agreements around reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And not until 2006 was the Global Warming Solutions Act signed, which is commonly referred to as AB 32, which really started California on the path of thoughtfully and strategically reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And we'll talk a little bit about some of these specific pathway points here, but these are really around making commitments to do the work needed to reduce emissions. And as we've kind of stepped into the 2010s, a pivot to also thinking about climate adaptation and resilience as a part of hazard mitigation as a response to the impacts that were being felt in Yolo County and we're feeling now to this day. So we're going to walk through some of these in a little bit more detail. And so in 2007, Yolo County became one of the first of 12 counties to sign the Cool Counties Initiative. So collectively reducing greenhouse gas emissions 80% below 1990 levels by 2050. And that was in line with the governor's executive order at the time, which set that same target target goal as well, that 2050 target. And the Climate Change Compact was also formed in that same year to help exchange information on how best to analyze and reduce emissions. And the Yolo County Climate Compact still meets regularly, continues to serve in that important information exchange role. The chair of the compact is Supervisor Don Saylor, and the county is an active participant. A number of really important gatherings have taken place over the years at strategic process points for the county and the cities that are working on climate change to work together on planning documents, on policy initiatives, on shared greenhouse gas inventories. And it's been a really important coordination point over the years. And so we zoom forward to 2008 to the first greenhouse gas inventory in the county. Total emissions from a backcasted greenhouse gas inventory to 1990 was estimated to be about a 6% increase between 1990 and 2008. The unincorporated population in that same time frame grew about 9.8%. So kind of reflecting on some of the changes in land use and energy codes between the prior housing stock and more current housing stock. And you'll note that as a relatively low growth county, many of the fast growing counties are obtaining a lot of their greenhouse gas emissions reductions from business as usual kind of process points by new development, because new development tends to be more efficient than older housing stock. And so they're able to claim benefit from those newer developments that are more efficient. We don't have that in unincorporated Yolo County. And so as you can see, in 2008, almost half of our emissions came from the agricultural sector from that inventory at that point, 16% from transportation and 29% from energy. And you'll note down here, wastewater is kind of captured in a rounding error, below 1%. It's captured and reflected here as 0%. Construction and mining around 4%, and stationary sources 5%. So those are point sources of emissions from across the county. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute too. So responding to that inventory, the county did a climate action plan for county operations only. So back in the late 2000s, there were a number of community climate action plans that were getting started, but the more consistent standard of practice was to do a municipal operations inventory. So looking at all the moving parts of a county government or city government and making sure that it's, we have a full baseline analysis there to reduce those emissions moving forward. So they did a detailed inventory at that time, summarized the strategies to reduce them, and recommended in that document a no greenhouse gas emissions growth from individual projects policy. So meaning the whole of the emissions profile of the county was supposed to stay the same moving forward from that point. Moving forward to 2009, the general plan was adopted and it included a significant number of emissions reduction measures and also some climate adaptation and resiliency measures, and required the county to develop a climate action plan. This was a significant shift at the time, and I was writing climate action plans at the time in other areas of the state, in wearing my other consultant hat at a prior firm. And we looked to the Yolo County General Plan as an example of some of the policy framework, particularly for agricultural emissions reduction. So really, when we think about the point in time 2009 was, it doesn't seem like that long ago. But you have to remember the AB 32 Global Warming Solutions Act had just passed a couple years before, and 2009 was when CEQA was first requiring, via Senate Bill 97, the analysis of greenhouse gas emissions in California Environmental Quality Act documents. So 2009 was still very early in the climate action planning standard of practice development process. So fast forward to 2011, Yolo County does a climate action plan that includes municipal facilities, but also countywide emissions. And the goals that the county set at that point were in line with state priorities, 80% below 1990 by 2050, but also looked at interim targets for 2030 and 2040, and the AB 32 aligned target of 2020. And so you can see with a 27% reduction by 2030 and 53% reduction by 2040, the county was really aiming to significantly reduce emissions from decade to decade moving forward. And again, this was standard practice in 2011 to start setting interim goals so that you can start tracking your progress over time. And per my earlier comment, agriculture was nearly half of your greenhouse gas emissions in the county. And the expectation in that climate action plan was that significant emissions reductions from the agricultural sector would also require significant shifts in crop patterns and operations. And so at that point, the county's climate action plan really focused on the energy sector through building efficiency measures and building scale renewable energy. And the community choice aggregation program that had not launched yet at that point, Valley Clean Energy, accounts for 45% of the estimated emission reductions from this climate action plan. And that's a very significant historical point, because when we look forward to 2015, when a CivicSpark member at that point, a CivicSpark AmeriCorps member, did a climate action plan progress report, they found that most of the emissions reductions after that 2011 document really came from the adoption of Valley Clean Energy as a community choice aggregator for the county. And with some significant emissions reductions taking place from the landfill methane capture process, you'll remember the greenhouse gas inventory had that as below 1%. So although there were significant emissions reductions from landfill operations, it really wasn't reflected that significantly in overall emissions. But that being said, we did have some emissions reductions from transportation and land use, some from building energy, and there was some progress on adaptation. But really the bulk of the emissions reduction measures came from Valley Clean Energy's implementation. And one of the things that this progress report showed was that there were some barriers to implementation that reduced the county's ability to move some things forward, which we're also taking forward into this process, acknowledging we need to learn from some of our lessons of the past, which is funding wasn't allocated to help implement many of the measures. There wasn't capacity within the county to really move those measures forward, in part because there wasn't funding, in part there wasn't assigned staff. There wasn't enough staff time or full-time equivalent staff to really focus on development and implementation of programs that would be needed to move many of these measures forward. And then there were some leadership shifts as well, and a lack of assigned accountability within the county for moving many of these measures forward. And so we've reflected on that 2015 plan as we're developing the scope of work and the strategy for this next climate action and adaptation plan, and recognizing there's some real gaps to fill in the process at that point. So some of the recommendations included really focusing on implementation. We've done a wonderful job as a county of developing policies, programs, and implementation measures. Let's really pivot towards implementing strongly, and establishing clear monitoring and reporting protocols to make sure that we're continuing to make progress. We're going to fast forward again to 2018 and the development of a multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. Again, this plan was used as an example by California Office of Emergency Services as a valuable coordination effort around how to incorporate climate change, how to talk about it within a local hazard mitigation plan, and how to coordinate across multiple jurisdictions for a hazard mitigation plan. And so this work was integrated into the safety element as well of the county's general plan. So the county's general plan actually includes a fair amount of content already on some of the understandings at that point on climate adaptation and resilience. The second greenhouse gas inventory was done that same year using 2016 data. There's always a couple year lag, a year to 2 year lag, depending. And it showed an overall emissions reduction of 8%. And you think 8% emissions reductions is pretty significant between 2011 and 2016. But then we come back to what was found in the Climate Action Plan Progress Report. Valley Clean Energy really was the primary driver behind much of that emissions reductions in that time period. And we talked a little bit about this earlier, but there's an opt-out option and an ultra-green option. And we've talked about this as an early action as well for county operations in particular to buy into the ultra-green status so that it automatically becomes carbon-free for all of those electricity accounts. So fast forward to 2020, resolution declaring a climate crisis and not just an urgent mobilization, but also an inclusive mobilization in Yolo County. And this is where your work really is queued up. It starts to get queued up in the passage of this emergency declaration. And one of the most significant emissions reductions targets of any county in the state or the country. So carbon neutral, and then after 2030, carbon negative. And that is a very significant target, only 8 years away to hit carbon neutral. And so that's part of why we've talked about multiple pathways for carbon reductions and emissions reductions. These early actions are part of that, getting the process going now, not waiting for a new climate action plan. And also taking some of what we already know through the county sustainability plan and starting to implement projects concurrent with the development of the climate action and adaptation plan. So many of these measures in the sustainability plan really pulled forward the foundational policies and programs that support sustainability across the county. There's a 7-year implementation timeframe, and there's multiple key elements in here as well that link back to the prior efforts, but also chart a path forward. And it does summarize and comply, or it summarizes and compiles all of those prior years' work along with new equity considerations, which, as we know, this Climate Commission feels equity is such an important part of this work. We know that in this next climate action and adaptation plan, we're going to continue to build out from that Yolo County sustainability plan. So here we are, the Climate Commission, developing a scope of work for the climate action plan and prioritizing early actions here in 2022. And we've reflected a bit on our lessons learned as well, in that single actions can have very big impacts. If we can focus our energy and focus our time on some single actions that are high impact, that can get us really far along. And also acknowledging some of the larger impact policies and programs may take multiple years to stand up. And so necessarily taking the low-hanging fruit isn't always the best option, because multi-year programs need to be developed early and continue to have that focus and energy over time. So assigning leadership and budget, big lesson learned from prior efforts, ensuring monitoring, reporting, and verification to track our progress over time, and acknowledging that many of the measures that are already passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors have not been implemented yet. So we have the ability to bring those forward and really prioritize their implementation, or in some cases, reprioritize them to really reflect the urgency of the climate emergency declaration. We've also been learning quite a bit, not just from our own experiences in the county, but also from other jurisdictions that have gone through a similar process. So we've interviewed Monterey County, Santa Barbara County, Ventura County, Sacramento County, the city of Sacramento, Napa County, and also San Mateo County more recently. And we are looking for the right jurisdiction outside of California. We've had a couple of near misses on interviews, but we are looking for some innovative inputs from other jurisdictions outside of California. But what we've learned from these various interviews is very similar to what we learned from our internal process. A climate action plan needs dedicated staff at the senior level to make sure that there is someone who's able to integrate the work of the climate action plan with funding and financing and with capital improvement plans. We found that about half of these climate action planning process have California Environmental Quality Act compliant caps for streamlining, meaning they're able to take future projects and go through a consistency review process with the climate action plan, and they can actually streamline the permitting process so those future projects don't have to analyze greenhouse gas emissions, assuming they're built consistent with the expectations of the climate action plan. We'll get into the details of that when we go through our scope of work in front of the commission. But right now, we've been discussing the pros and cons of a California Environmental Quality Act process associated with the climate action plan, particularly considering we're a relatively low development, unincorporated area that is really intended to stay that way. There's a high interest in a regional approach, but there are time and capacity constraints. It's a lot of work to coordinate with other jurisdictions, with other partners. But for a decarbonization goal by 2030, there's also a lot of value in sharing the resources and capacity and funding that's needed to really accelerate our emissions reductions to that point. We also found from these various interviews that consultant involvement varied. We had cost profiles anywhere between $150,000 to $1 million for these climate action planning process. Staff, anywhere between 1 staff member and 10 staff member were working on these climate action planning processes. We also had varying roles for climate commissions, climate committees, and all of that is kind of going into our thought process as we develop the scope of work. Per one of the public comments a little bit earlier, there are a lot of different ways to develop a climate action plan. And one of the questions that we'll bring forward to the commission when we do have the scope of work is, what is the preferred role of the commission in implementing the scope of work? Is it a working role, or is it a advisory role, a review role? There's a lot of different things, and we'll bring some options forward to you for consideration. And the last point is that everybody included adaptation. Climate adaptation was an important part of every climate action plan at very, very different levels of analysis. And that is another part that we're weighing as a part of the scope of work. There's been some great work done across the county and the Sacramento region on climate vulnerability and adaptation options. So we're looking at how best to include that historical information into where we need to go into the future. And so that's a summary of my presentation here on the history of climate action planning in Yolo County. I know it's a lot of information, and I hope it's valuable and helps to support understanding of the work ahead. And Jay, back to you.
Thank you, Michael. You can't hear it, but I'm silently clapping at your presentation. This was amazing. And I'm amazed at how you were able to condense it, just present it in a few minutes. Yeah, very, I really appreciate us being able to appreciate the work that has been done before and have an overview of the timeline. And also, I think that's going to be helpful and inform how we're moving forward as well. I think Commissioner Reed would like to react as well.
Thank you. And thank you, Michael, for the presentation. I had a couple of questions and a couple of comments. One, with respect to the 2018 greenhouse gas emissions inventory, my understanding is that we also had 3 cities cooperate in that as compared to the original. And I wondered, your 8% reduction, did that come from the unincorporated areas only, or was it the incorporated greenhouse gas emissions inventory that covered the 3 cities whose data we had access to as well?
My immediate understanding is that is the unincorporated area, but Taro, yes, Taro's nodding his head, so he agrees, so that's good.
Okay, super. Do we have any indications about emissions reductions from the cities over any period of time? Some of them did have climate action plans, I think, from an earlier date that were in force.
We don't have that as a part of this presentation, but that's a very good context to understand as we're going into this climate action adaptation planning process. One of the things we've talked about is with all the other jurisdictions having some climate action planning work in place, we have a huge opportunity to connect to some of that earlier work, align around some policies and priorities and work together on them, including with UC Davis, which was brought up at our last ad hoc working group as well, and how we can build better connections to their decarbonization work, which is also on a similarly aggressive schedule.
Super, I appreciate that. I also appreciate that you've already resolved one of the issues that you discovered in your research, and that is that we now have a dedicated person for sustainability coordination, and I think that's going to give us a big step up. So congratulations on that. I think it'll make a big difference. Most of you who've worked with me know that I'm really very interested in implementation and also outcomes. And so I appreciate the monitoring focus of a need to do, a need to improve. As well, I wanted to add to the list of things we need to be mindful of, and some of the public has reminded us of that in their comments today, and that is strengthening our outreach to really accomplish inclusion and the equity goals that are important to this commission. And it's going to require more than a new website or, I think some of that discussion took place in the Solano Yolo air quality comments too, about publicizing their programs to underserved communities. So I'd bump that up as a bullet point, as well as the importance that coincides with that of transparency. And making sure that people have access to our processes, all of them, and our outcomes. And my personal preference is that there eventually will be a dashboard that tracks our measures and our progress, so that people can access that online and understand what's happening and what we're doing and what we're accomplishing and where we need to beef up activity a little bit. Relative to the regional approach, I've made this comment before, and I made it more recently at the Climate Compact, and that is that I think that is a great forum for us to continue with regional cooperation and exchange of information. It may not exist in a totally formal context, but I think that it's very valuable. I know several of us participate in that. The last set of presentations was phenomenal with respect to the groundwater program and the agencies involved in that, and an invitation ensued for even greater collaboration with what is going on in the field of drought management and groundwater sustainability. So there are important forums for maintaining and even developing more relationships. So reaching out to our regional partners or potential partners and having them be speakers at the Climate Compact and inviting more people to participate, I think would be really helpful to our process. And I think I will be quiet now. So thank you for listening to me.
Commissioner Reed, thank you. That was very, very informative. And Michael, I'd like to react to Commissioner Reed's comments if you would like.
Well, actually, I forgot to mention one piece of some of the work leading up to the climate emergency declaration was a convening that was hosted through the Yolo County Climate Compact that brought forward equity and justice kind of best practices. And Daniel Hamilton, in fact, came forward from the city of Oakland and shared his experiences and the city's experiences developing the equity climate action planning document, the process, and really encouraging the county to take a strong stance when it came to equity and justice and the work that the county's doing. And I found that presentation very enlightening, and I'd be curious if there was a recording of it. If I remember correctly, I do believe it was recorded. It could be a valuable resource for the commissioners to review if they weren't able to be at that meeting. And I believe that was about 2.5 years ago. Yeah, so and to your comments, Commissioner Reed, the equity focus of some of the discussions leading into kind of the engagement around the climate action adaptation planning work. It's a focus of the ad hoc working group. In this next meeting, I think you'll find the meeting of the ad hoc working group will talk quite a bit about some of what that equity and engagement process looks like. And to your point around implementation, right? We don't want equity and justice to be a process point. And I think everybody on this commission likely wants authentic, real, meaningful focus on those topics. So thank you for bringing that forward, and would ask if Kristen had any additional comments to make on that.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. And I think we had a good discussion about this at our last working group meeting, as Michael mentioned, and I think this will be a great point to discuss at our next commission meeting once we come back with the draft of the scope of work. Julia, who's on the line, is working on a communication strategy, and we had a good conversation around the importance of having a number of different outreach channels that were really intentional about as we go into that process. And so I guess don't want to talk about it too much now, because I think we will have a nice, robust discussion about that. But noted, I think this is such an important part of the process and something we really want to be very, very intentional about as we move forward.
Thank you. And Michael mentioned that I wanted to say the Oakland program is covered on their website for people that want to look into it a little bit more thoroughly. But one comment I forgot to make is that while you're doing these interviews and what you have drawn from the interviews that you've already conducted, I would be interested to know sort of what's happened since they adopted their climate action plan. So we've had about 2 years or 2.5 years or 3 years on some of these plans. Some were adopted back in 2018. So how's it going? And what's going well, what's not going well, and what barriers and challenges do they continue to encounter? Or what successes have they had that we can replicate and put to use in our own work? Thank you.
So I want to just mention earlier, Kristen referred to Julia. I just want to mention we talking about Julia Olson, just for the record, for public record. Thank you. Just it's past 6 p.m. Commissioner Austin had to leave at 6, so she's no longer with us. And Taro also will step away for a few minutes and hopefully will join us again later. Any additional comment, feedback before I add my own piece? Okay, I don't see any reaction for the moment. So I was wondering, So first things, you mentioned Daniel Hamilton's presentation. If you think that, if the recording is public and if you think that it will be of interest to our community as well and not just the commissioner, so maybe it would be a good idea to also have that as a resource on the website. This is just a thought. I'll let the staff decide. And I was wondering, something I really appreciated in your presentation was a breakdown between this is the situation, these are the goals. In the process of moving forward, these are the barriers that we encountered. This is what worked, what didn't work. So now when it comes on to the work of this commission and to our county working on an updated climate action plan, I was wondering, what are some of the barriers or challenges that are anticipated? That didn't really come through for me in your presentation.
Well, right now, I think so many of the lessons learned that we have from some of the other case studies apply directly to Yolo County as well. The staff capacity to support a decarbonization plan at this scale and speed is certainly a part of the background discussion, as is the funding to help move significant initiatives forward. And we've talked a lot about this as part of our early actions. And I think it's really done a great job to kind of queue up for the commissioners some of the prioritization work that we're going to have to do in the climate action and adaptation planning process, because really we can't afford to fund everything all at once. And we can't afford via staff capacity to implement everything all at once either. And so one of the things that we're already thinking about is how do we add capacity in a creative way that doesn't necessarily rely on a full suite of consultants, that doesn't rely upon hiring a whole lot of new full-time staff. So I think there's going to be some creative options you'll hear come forward over the coming months to think about that longer term. And then the other piece of it is just human nature and buy-in into the work. I think that you can do a lot of engagement, a lot of outreach, but if it's hard to reduce emissions or it's costly to reduce emissions, individuals and organizations will likely not make that transition. So how do we make this work as easy as possible for everybody in the unincorporated county, as cost effective as possible, and bring our partners together from the cities and the region to really help align and reduce the costs of implementation from both a financial standpoint and a staff capacity standpoint. And there's a lot of moving parts, and I won't mince words. The decarbonization goal by 2030 is a very robust goal for an unincorporated low growth county like Yolo County. And we're going to have to get creative about what that looks like. And I think the commission has brought forward agriculture as a strong focus for obvious reasons, knowing the county's both the emissions scenarios that we're looking at, but also that it's such a heavily agricultural county. So there is all kinds of wonderful new research coming out on regenerative agriculture, carbon farming, and also significant funding resources coming online to support both research, pilot projects, implementation, and transitions. So to make a long story short, there are quite a few speed bumps in the road, so to speak. But I think with the intention and the passion around this work across the county, with the dedication of this commission, the staff, I'm really optimistic and excited about the work ahead. And knowing that it is going to be a heavy lift, but it also could serve as a wonderful case study example for other counties that are in the same situation all across the country. And yeah, so I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate your answer. And I just want to add, share one last thing. I strongly echo and second Commissioner Reed's comments regarding the importance of strengthening outreach efforts, and that, yes, so updating a website, having an online presence definitely is not going to be enough. I was wondering, I'm really glad that you touched on a little bit on the agenda, what the focus will be for the next ad hoc working group. And I was wondering, so I was brought on board as the environmental justice lead, in part because of my connection with various groups in the community. I think that our commission is taking a good step toward strengthening our outreach when it comes to the representation across the board of our group. I also once again want to thank Commissioner Morgan, who is representing Yochadihi Nation. So that type of relationships is very important in not just communicating what the commission is doing, but you mentioned the importance of being able to match the solutions that are suggested to what people on the ground can actually implement, and whether or not it's going to be costly, and if it's going to create more problem for them than solutions. And I think definitely one of the keys is to be able to get input as we are, drafting solutions and still thinking of the best way to move forward, or looking at the best projects, that can be funded yet. So I'm saying all of that because I'm hoping, I don't know if the ad hoc working group will be the best place to make it happen, but I'm hoping at some point that we be able to identify key community leaders who will be able to be that bridge between the work that's being done regarding the climate action plan and getting input from low-income, marginalized community members, and just being able to make this as a collaborative effort as possible. Yes? Okay. So it is already 6:21. The meeting ends at 6:30. Just one last check, commissioners or Deputy Allen. Is there any additional feedback or thoughts you'd like to share? And then I will turn to members of the public too.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So members of the public, do you have any comments for us? Okay, now back to the commission. I think Commissioner White would like the floor. Yes.
Yes, because I have to correct my own self. I mentioned to Petrea that the governor's executive order had been signed into law, and it has not been signed into law yet. It's still in draft mode. So I take that back.
Got it.
Thanks, Commissioner White, for the precision. And Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. I was looking at the schedule, the longer term schedule, and especially given the topics that we've just discussed, I wondered if we might put a discussion of creating further work groups of the commission to handle documents or topics such as outreach, inclusion and outreach as one, and potentially one on funding and finance.
Okay, so you were suggesting the creation
in a future
of
agenda. Yeah, if in a
So-
future agenda.
Okay.
I'm sorry, my dog is joining the conversation.
All good. We are very inclusive.
To put in a
Okay.
future agenda, and hopefully soon, like May,
Okay.
whether any further working groups should be created to address issues, one on outreach and communications, and the other on funding and finance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have it down, and I'm sure Kristen and Charlie took notes too. Any additional comments? Okay, so I think this concludes item number 8. And Michael, again, thank you very, very much for this presentation. We are moving on to agenda item number 9. So Commissioner members, we are ready for your reports, comments. We already got a comment on future agenda item. Thank you, Commissioner Reid, for spearheading us into this topic. Does anyone have any announcement you'd like to share, Commissioner Kim?
It's not an announcement and it's not a future agenda item, but I guess, one of the things that we discussed in the working group was that, as Yolo County is developing its climate action plan, we know UC Davis has a very, I don't want to say aggressive, but very exciting climate action plan. And in many ways, they're kind of ahead And so making sure that that we can maybe have an opportunity to learn about UC Davis's climate action plan progress, what's working, what's not working, and maybe what we can learn from how UC Davis is approaching for our insights. And maybe it could be just for the working group, or it could be for the commission at large. Just an idea, and I don't want to throw anybody on the spot, so no response needed. Just wanted to throw out an idea.
I'm not going to name any UC Davis affiliated commissioners as well. But actually, I think it's an excellent idea because I think it just, complements our mission goals. And I will suggest that, maybe we think of tabling a presentation on UC Davis Climate Action Plan, because I think this also will be of interest to members of the public. So again, just a thought here. Commissioner Alvarez, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. The Natural Resources Agency just released their natural solutions or nature-based climate solutions that describes climate change solutions for natural and working lands, defined by different ecosystem, grasslands, wetlands, forests, croplands, things like that. And then some recommendations on monitoring and tracking outcomes and regional profiles. I just sent the link to Kristen, and I'm hoping that she can share it with other commissioners.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Alvarez. And Commissioner Dulcich, I'm sorry, you have the floor. Thank you.
That's great. I just want to affirm the yes, kind of a check-in from UC Davis would be great. And I think when the timing is right, and that's really when you tell us it's right. We can absolutely do that and kind of go over from the overall UC system-wide perspective, the goals and ambitions, and then go into more detail about the campus and our planning for both the Davis campus and the Sacramento campus on some of the major initiatives, emission reduction, electrification, advocacy and awareness, and go through those kind of topics. So we would be very excited to share that. And there might be crossover or lessons learned that we could share. So happy to do that.
Thank you so much. And personally, I think the earlier, the better. Kristen, I need your input on that. Just making sure we're adding this item to future agenda items, or I don't know if it goes in the long range calendar as well.
Yeah, I think this is something, great point on both of these, on this item and the other potential long range calendar update. So we can make those changes as staff and provide an updated long range calendar. And I will reach out about that UC Davis presentation.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks again. Commissioners, any additional announcement, exciting workshop you heard about? Okay. I don't hear, say yes, Commissioner White.
So this is an announcement for the group. This is a brag about me. Tomorrow night, I am being honored as West Sacramento Citizen of the Year with a Lifetime Achievement Award from Mike McGowan. So just want to tell you, just bragging.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm feeling proud by extension just because I know you know. That is wonderful. Congratulations again. Anyone else is getting an award? This is very hard act to follow. Great. So if you don't have any additional comments, news to share, so we are moving on. Let me see. I'm sorry, member of the public, do you have a comment? Before I close this, no public comment. Okay. Thank you, Charlie. So we're moving on to agenda item number 10, which is just a mention of the long range calendar. This is not an item that's usually up for discussion. And Kristen, is there anything you'd like to add about it?
I'll just share my screen very quickly. So just looking out to May as our next meeting. We'll have another meeting of the ad hoc working group and have a discussion of the scope of work coming out of that conversation. We'll also next month have a discussion of the communications plan. And I think a lot of really excellent feedback that we've gotten today. We'll go into that conversation as well. And then just a note that we are preparing to take the Suite of 7 early actions to the board for consideration at the May 24th meeting. So be making the final updates that we've collected from you all today. Thank you so much for those. And then sending that forward. So I think I'll leave it at that. Obviously, we have some additional updates to make, and thank you all so much for all of your wonderful feedback and input today.
Kristen, thank you very much. And I think this marks the end of our meeting officially. So it is 6:29, and I am calling this meeting adjourned. Thank you all again, Commissioner, for your time, your service, your very, very valuable input, and members of the public. Big thanks as well. Thanking the staff and thanking our consultants. It's an honor to work with you. I hope you have a great week. Good night.
Good night. Thanks all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.